Yo, what's up, fellas? Welcome back to another completely objective tier list. And today I'm going to be doing a tier list of Stanley Kubrick's films. Kubrick is one of my all-time favorite directors. He's absolutely brilliant. He makes some of the best films of all time, in my opinion. And today I'm going to be doing a tier list of all 13 of his movies. Now, here are the categories. We have perfect. These are the films that I think, are perfect and I would consider a masterpiece. Then you got the amazing, which are the films that are not quite in this perfect, but are just freaking awesome and just not a masterpiece at level. So these would be like the 4.5 out of 5s or the 5 out of 5s on Letterboxd that aren't necessarily masterpieces. Then you got the greats. That would probably be around 4 out of 5, maybe a lower 4.5 out of 5. The goods are 3.5 to low 4. Then the meh are 3, I'd say around a 3 to a 2.5 star. And then bland would probably be like a 2-star movie, or maybe a 2.5 star, something around that range. None of this is exact. I'm kind of just doing what my heart says, and I wanted to make a video that didn't require me to put in that much effort, to be completely honest with you. So we're doing a tier list, and I think we should get it right off with the 2 bland movies. I think there are 2. First up, Fear and Desire. I mean, you can't really blame him. It was his very first movie, and he tried to disown it, destroy every copy. I don't think it was that bad. I think there are definitely some aspects of it, like the cinematography and the camera work is all still very, very good, because Stanley Kubrick, regardless of the point in his career, still has that artistic ability, and I think that was definitely really good. But the characters and the script and the story and the scope of it was all kind of felt a little bit off, and it felt like they shot it like in some forest beside someone's house or something. So it felt very small scale, not very important, wasn't saying much, just a very bland movie. But if you're watching through Kubrick's filmography, there's no reason not to watch it. It's a decent movie. So then we got also Killer's Kiss is the other bland film. This is not necessarily his worst film. It's definitely better than Fear and Desire, but it is definitely more forgettable. So I'll kind of rank the tiers, I guess. So it's an okay made movie. It would maybe be in meh, but all the characters and everything that happens is just so forgettable, so I'm putting it in bland. Alright, now we are going to go through the order of the films, so I don't have to see, it's not predictable basically. So, first up, as you can see, is Eyes Wide Shut. This is an amazing movie. You might think, hey Dominic, you're 17 years old, you shouldn't be watching it. You are probably right, but I did watch it and it was amazing. So, you know what? I don't even care. It was really, really great. Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise both give amazing performances. The story is very strange, but executed to perfection. Kubrick is just freaking amazing. This is definitely, I think, even a little bit of an underrated movie, because not a lot of people give it the credit that I personally think it deserves, but I'd say it's definitely up for debate. I personally think it is bordering on, I'd say, between great and amazing, but I think it squeaks its way into amazing. Next up, you got 2001: A Space Odyssey. You can probably guess where this is going, straight up into perfect. This is actually contrary to what my Kubrick ranked list said. I've rewatched it since then, and it is now my favorite Kubrick movie. I think it is a masterpiece. I think it is honestly a perfect movie. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best visuals of all time, and just such a hypnotizing movie. So thought-provoking. Just a perfect movie, plain and simple. I think it's one of the masterpieces in film that I have personally seen. Next up, we got A Clockwork Orange. Now, this is one that actually has grown on me quite a bit. I really didn't like it my first watch, but now I kind of see what it's trying to say and what Kubrick was doing with all the filmmaking and all that sort of stuff. And while it's still not necessarily an enjoyable watch, it is absolutely perfect in what it tries to do. But because it's not necessarily enjoyable or anything, it's honestly quite like I get a headache every time I watch this film. So because of that, I'd say it's a high amazing. So I'm gonna put it above Eyes Wide Shut. I think it is a masterpiece because what it sets out to do, it does that perfectly, but I just can't put it in perfect because it's just a nightmare to watch. And I don't know, I'm sorry, but I think it is a masterpiece, but there's just so much that is like irritating to watch about it that I can't justify putting it in perfect. Next up, we got Lolita. Now this is one that I think the opposite of Clockwork Orange. I loved it first time I watched it. The more I thought about it, the less I liked it. I still think it is I'm gonna say is a great movie still. I think it is really, really good. I think the fact that Kubrick actually pulled this off was just insane. I don't know how he gets us to sympathize with the main character, Humbert or Humbert. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the fact that he gets us to sympathize with this pedophile basically is kind of insane. The story is honestly very strange, similar to a lot of his films, but it is executed amazing. The actual filmmaking in it is definitely seems like some of his least polished for some reason, but it is definitely still amazing. Performances are great. Everything I think about this movie is just great. Not for everyone though. I do think a lot of people would find this like down here, maybe in the meh or even in the good. Not a lot of people like this movie that much. I think it is a great movie. Next up, we got The Killing. Similar to Lolita, this is one that I absolutely loved on my first watch, but ever since that first watch, it's kind of gone down a little bit for me. But thinking on it again, I think I'm going to have to put it in great. Dude, like, I just love Kubrick too much. It's going to be a very top-heavy list, I think, but yeah, The Killing is a great movie. It's basically Reservoir Dogs before Reservoir Dogs. And it is in Kubrick. It's basically Reservoir Dogs except Kubrick, and I absolutely loved it. It was super immersive and entertaining, and although it wasn't necessarily trying to say too much, not too much like social commentary or anything, I think what it was trying to do, it achieved that, and it was just a super entertaining movie to watch. So I gotta put it in the great tier, to be honest with you. Next up, The Shining. Straight up into the perfect tier. I think it is a perfect horror movie. One of my favorites of all time. It's not quite my favorite horror movie, but it is phenomenal. Definitely the most well shot horror movie. Definitely up there with one of the best performances in a horror film by obviously Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance. It's just a phenomenal movie. This used to be my number one on my Kubrick ranked, but upon rewatch, 2001 became that. I do still think that is a perfect movie though. So honestly, that's kind of crazy that Kubrick has two perfect movies, two masterpieces, but he does, and that's just how good he is. Next up, we got Barry Lyndon. This is going up into amazing. I do think, see, these two are interchangeable. I'm actually going to put Clockwork Orange above it, because I don't know, I just really like A Clockwork Orange. But Barry Lyndon is a phenomenal film. I think the reason I put A Clockwork Orange above it is because I enjoy the story of it more, you know what I'm saying? Because like, I'm not a huge fan of like these sort of period piece dramas and stuff, but I did really love Barry Lyndon. This is definitely a period piece, but done right, because it's done by Kubrick, if you know what I mean. Everything has some weird humor that definitely works. It is by far, I'd say, it might be Kubrick's most beautiful movie. The aesthetic naturalism in this film is just so amazing. The like landscapes and whatnot are beautiful, just beautiful. And overall, it was just a great movie. But for a concept that didn't intrigue me like immensely, it definitely was a little too long for my taste. So for that reason, I had to put Clockwork Orange above it, but it's still an amazing movie. Full Metal Jacket. Now, please don't kill me, but I think Full Metal Jacket is potentially Kubrick's most overrated movie. I'm not gonna put it in meh because I don't think it's that bad, but I'm gonna put it in good. So here's the thing. I watched it and I was really it was really jarring because I loved the first half when they were at boot camp. Loved all the stuff with Private Pile and Joker, and obviously all the memes from R. Lee Ermey as the drill sergeant. And I just think that first half is absolutely phenomenal. But then once that first half ended, it was kind of abrupt, and once they went to Vietnam, it felt like it was like a completely different movie. And I think the first half was very slow paced, built everything really, really great. And so when that was finished, I felt like I finished the movie. Like I felt like that was enough. That was enough for me. I felt like I had enough of this movie. It felt long enough to be its own movie. It had enough development and stuff to be its own movie. But then they go to Vietnam and then have another whole movie in Vietnam, completely separately with a couple of characters overlapping. So that just kind of threw me off a little bit. I think both parts on their own are really, really good, but the fact that they went together was like, I didn't really like it that much, to be honest with you. I think I think these could have been released as like two separate movies. I think the Vietnam War film of when they're in Vietnam could have been released as its own movie, and then the boot camp could have been released as its own movie, obviously with a little bit more development on each side and maybe a little bit longer, but it genuinely felt like two movies in one, and it just felt too packed. Next up, Dr. Strangelove. I'm going to put this one in great. I don't quite think it's amazing. It is the top of the great tier. Very, very funny movie. I actually thought it's not like humor that you kind of just hear and you laugh. You kind of got to think about it a little bit, but when you do think about it, it is actually quite a funny movie. Definitely really well made, but not as well made as some of his other films because it was earlier in his career. Peter Sellers gives one of my favorite performances of all time, to be honest. He plays 3 different characters in the film, and he gives a brilliant performance in all 3 roles. And it's just a really great movie, honestly, it's a good war film as well as a good comedy film. So overall, I just really, really love Dr. Strangelove. So I actually lied earlier in the video. I do think Spartacus is also bland. It's between Killer's Kiss and Spartacus as the best of the bland tier, but this is one because this was Kubrick's only for hire gig, so he didn't have full creative control, and since he was an auteur, which basically means he made everything to do with all of his stories and whatnot, and since he didn't have full creative control, it felt least Kubrick, and it just wasn't for me. It was a really, really long movie. It was a historical epic, which typically aren't my thing, except for Gladiator. I love that movie, but regardless, Spartacus was pretty bland. And finally, we got Paths of Glory. I'm going to put it in great. I'm going to put it below The Killing, though. I loved Paths of Glory. It was a really great movie. I think the performance in the lead role was very, very good. But it just didn't intrigue me as much as the other films. You know, it felt a little bit less unique than the other films, and it just didn't do as much for me afterwards. You know what I mean? I had a good time watching it in the moment, but all these other films had some sort of impact on me after I watched them. I kind of thought about them afterwards. This one was kind of forgettable, to be honest. I watched it, liked it in the moment, but didn't really think much about it afterwards. So because of that, I do still think it is a great movie, but just not on the tiers and the greatness of his other films. So this right here is my completed Kubrick tier list. If you enjoyed this tier list, definitely make sure to leave me a like down below, and also comment down below what directors you want to see me rank, or even making just a plain tier list for in the description. Obviously check the comments, comment what directors you want me to rank. I will try and make some of those videos happen. But that's it for me, guys. I will see you in the next one.